FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Think and how to think by the press.
Right.
They want to make those decisions themselves. So as he is doing this, the average reporter thinks this guy is horrible. The average voter thinks finally someone is standing up to them, shouting them down, and putting them back in their place.
You're such a liar. You lie.
Frank Luntz there talking about the feedback he's getting from his focus groups regarding Trump's address to the media yesterday and the way he talks to them and what he says to them. That is something we're going to talk about here coming up on the show in the next segment, because I want you to hear what this veteran who you heard earlier, this Frank Baldessaro, he's also a state representative up there in New Hampshire or something like that. He absolutely chewed the media out yesterday.
You need to get your head out of your butt, focus on the real issues.
He was talking about the fact, he alleges, that Clinton put a bunch of veterans who support her up to protesting, but they didn't have a legitimate cause, is his argument. So more on that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Stick around for that, please. I mentioned earlier the cost increases that we're seeing with Obamacare. This is basically the second or third round of these. And the question is, whose rates are going up and why? Because everybody was supposed to keep whatever doctor they had, and they were supposed to save a bunch of money every year, right? Remember that line? Our guest right now is William Short. He is the CEO for MirrorFlex and a health insurance expert because of that. Mr. Short, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, well, thanks for coming on today. Tell folks who aren't familiar with what this is all about why they could get some sticker shock if they rely on Obamacare for their health care.
Well, I think sticker shock is probably the best case scenario in terms of what's coming down the pipe. At the end of this year, we have a couple subsidies that were used by the ACA to kind of coerce insurance companies to play the ball, and join the exchanges that are going to expire. The first one was designed to help pay for the most expensive people in the risk pool, and the second one that's expiring was designed to actually, quote-unquote, to allow the insurance companies to get their footing with this new risk pool, basically filling the gap in terms of actuarying out and miscalculating what these risk pools were actually cost to insure. And the kind of other component to it that is very interesting is that the whole funding mechanism behind the ACA was that the young and invincible, the millennials, were going to jump into this plan and pay for all the old and sick, which is not happening, mainly because of the law itself allowing them to stay on their parents' plans until they're 26, and the no pre-existing condition clause, which allows people to jump in and jump out when they're sick, get care, pay for the insurance, but not continue to pay for the insurance after they receive their care and well again. So it's a real disaster or a death spiral that many critics had voiced now for some time.
Well, but the subsidies were sort of the catch here all along. I heard somebody say one time that Obamacare only works if you don't. Because if you don't work, if you have a lower income, then you're in line for additional subsidies separate from the ones that are expiring, correct?
That's correct. 80% of the people that get their health coverage in the individual markets and exchange are able to receive subsidies. And those individual subsidies are paramount in terms of driving this. But even then, they created all these backwards incentives that they would give you a penalty that we were told, but then it turned out it was actually a real tax. But the only way you actually pay that tax and not getting the care or get the coverage to begin with is if you actually pay taxes and actually have a refund, which is the mechanism by which they collect that tax, that penalty. So it's a backwards world where then these carriers are left with their subsidies going away, and they say, wait a minute, we can't continue to ensure this high-risk old population is jumping into this, and so they start dropping out of the exchanges, which we're seeing every day. UnitedHealthcare is announcing that they're also leaving the California exchange, and it's leaving a smaller number of carriers to cover the risk and carry the load, causing one of the reasons why premiums are going to continue to skyrocket.
I'm sure. So we're talking to William Short from MirrorFlex. Now, tell me about your company for a minute, because MirrorFlex it helps administer benefits for companies, correct?
Yes, we focus on administering health savings accounts, flexible spending arrangements, health reimbursement accounts for about 37,000 employers across the country. And so we have a great kind of, crystal ball, if you will, in terms of what employers are doing to offer benefits to attract and retain talent. Which is kind of an interesting thing is that before the ACA was actually enacted, employers offered benefits to attract and retain talent. It was competitive pressure they were under. And they continue to do so, but in kind of unique ways. We're seeing a real rise in mid and small employers that are trying to avoid throwing their employees on the exchanges by going self-insured and doing some kind of unique market-based solutions across the country, which is very interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I wondered how they were dealing with that, because if there's this much pressure on companies like United Healthcare to get out of these exchanges, that's bound to have, I would imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, that it's bound to have some sort of impact on how much they're having to charge these larger group providers. So eventually, is it going to force the cost to go up for people who have their insurance through work?
So, yes, it's kind of everything is moving down the same spectrum, if you will, and also that's affecting in big ways the rising, healthcare services and RX and medical inflation that's on the other side of the equation that's also driving this, due in large part due to the inefficiency of the payments that are occurring. And so what employers are doing, and actually what some of these insurance carriers are moving towards, where they actually have the new profit centers, is focusing on going self-insured. Mm-hmm. And these carriers are then offering their networks up. They're actually not, in many cases, underwriting insurance. They're just providing access to their networks, which is interesting, considering that they were all health insurance companies to begin with, but they're rapidly moving away from that because it's not profitable for them anymore.
William Short, do you see a day down the road where this Obamacare system, as it's set up, collapses under its own weight if these private insurers continue to withdraw?
Absolutely. I mean, many critics mentioned in 2010 that this was designed to crater the employer market and crater the private insurance market as we know it. And I don't know if that was the plan or if it's the result of a 2,500-page bill with about 25,000 pages of regulation. But what I do know is that it's not sustainable, and the death spiral that we've all heard about is happening rapidly. The CBO announced this March of this year that if the ACA had not been enacted, 6 million more people in the individual market would be covered, and up to 50% cheaper in terms of getting that coverage. So it's a massive spiral to the race to the bottom, and then the only answer that can come out of that piece is, well, then do we develop a single payer under the Medicaid system that would deliver to the states, which would continue to put a huge strain on our state budget, and where we look like Europe at the end of the day, which is a universal payer for everyone, but only the wealthy can buy up, which is rather sad considering before the Affordable Care Act, affordable and providing care, pretty much everybody in this country had the same access to care, but we're rapidly moving down. There will be a great divide created by the Affordable Care Act and that misnomer.
We threw out the baby with the bathwater, didn't we?
We did. We certainly did.
Absolutely. William Short, CEO of MirrorFlex, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, good to get him on there. Did you hear that? I just want to make sure everybody let that soak in for just a minute. I mean, I didn't break any ground when I came up with this theory, but I'm just telling you that the whole point here was to direct the system towards single payer. If they could turn it into a government-run healthcare system, that's what they wanted to do, but they needed to do it slowly and let people realize that when they realized Obamacare was in place and unworkable, the next excuse will be, well, have you heard? If Ted Cruz gets elected and on day one he overturns Obamacare through executive order, what about the 11 million people who now have health care under Obamacare? So that's going to be their argument. You can't take that away from them. We've got to continue this system and just make it part of Medicaid. So it's going to be a single payer system or Medicare. That's been the goal from day one, in my opinion, and nobody has been willing to admit that they had to fool the American people to get this much of it in place, and then it would be impossible to get rid of. Just add this to your list. Please add this to the list of reasons why, no matter what, no matter how bad your Never Burger tastes, you've got to take a bite and vote for Donald Trump. You have to. So if Supreme Court's number one on the list, you better put your health care system just below that, because if Hillary Clinton gets in place, the one who originally came up with the idea of the single-payer health care system in this country back in the early 90s, guess where we're going, folks? We're going to be bankrupt like Greece in 20 years. Wake up. I'll take your phone calls, 314-969-9797. You're listening to the Mark Cox Show. James, stay on the line. I got a couple lines open. And remember, in the next hour, we're going to give away 2 more tickets to Boston at the St. Charles Family Arena coming up on Friday. Stick around.